Okay, today we are going to talk about recall training. So by recall training, I'm referring to what you might see as a traditional recall. So trying to teach your dog to return to you on the word something like come. Okay, it's really important that you do have control of your puppy for its own safety and others. Okay, you don't want your puppy running over to things which may result in negative experiences. So really, really important, okay, because this will have an impact on your puppy's ability to gain confidence, and it will also have an impact on their developing personalities. It does take time and patience to teach your puppy to return to you in varying situations. Okay? Every time you change the context, potentially they're seeing the learning is different. So you've got to take it into different contexts. And also you need them in that kind of getting it a little bit environmentally sound and have some experience so they're able to kind of listen to you. Okay, remember we talked about that emotional scale where we had kind of, happy, excited, up to manic, uneasy, worried to terrified. Okay, and these bubbles kind of over either end where they're not going to be able to listen to you, because this is just the emotional state of mind working rather than the intellectual state of mind. Okay, so your puppy's not going to be able to respond to you when their emotions are in high. So, if they're doing those initial greetings with dogs when they're first going outside, they're not going to be able to read the other dog's body language. They're too busy dealing with their emotions at the time. So if you do need to get your puppy out of that situation for any reason, put some high-value food on their nose, lure them away. If they're not responding to the food because of where their emotions are at, but you feel you need to get them away from the dog, then, you've got your need to increase distance, or you can kind of pick your puppy up and get them out of that situation, unless you've got a giant breed that's a little bit more difficult to pick up. Okay, so the first stage of recall, what I do is I do teach my puppies the word come, and I have lots of various recall cues, which we'll talk about later. But I like to classic condition a recall cue to start with. So remember, with classical conditioning, you're trying to generate an automatic response. And a lot of breeders would have usually classic conditioned something. Okay, and typically this, a lot of breeders might do a kind of pop, pop, pop sound, okay, which Mex is just responding to there in the background and saying, I think you said that word, Mum. Some breeders, particularly gun dog breeders, may have already done a lot of classical conditioning on the whistle, and the puppy may be responding to a whistle, okay? So my classic condition sound, what I want is something that's on a continuous loop, okay? And the reason for that is when those emotions are going out here, a single syllable word such as come might not grab their attention, okay? Whereas if I've got something on a repetitive loop, it's more likely to kick in and get the puppy to respond. So if I've got some way of automatically getting my puppy back to me, I can be more methodical in the stages that I'm going through with come. I can make sure I'm basing it on 100% success, which is really important. So let's have a look at the classic conditioned recall, which means you have some means of getting your puppy back to you. Obviously we did the kissy noise. This is similar to the kissy noise. Okay, so kissy noise I use for kind of short distances. This is going to be your longer distance. Okay, so I've got a load of sauce food ready in my hand, and I do a puppy. Show them the bowl hand. This is their first understanding of the bowl, and I basically put the food into the bowl. They're not allowed to steal it from this hand en route. Okay, so they get used to this bowl is a positive kind of picture. Okay, and I keep feeding until I switch the dog off and tell them I've finished. Whoosh. Okay, so I keep repeating that randomly throughout the day, and obviously the dog's got to be close to me to start with. Remember, go back over the rules of classic conditioning in week 1, day 1, where we talked about those. So I've got good £50 notes here. I've got chicken. I will do surprise kind of £50 notes, £100 notes, okay, for the puppy as well. So I want this really well conditioned that when the dog hears this kind of little phrase, they're definitely coming running to me, okay? Puppy, bowl hand. Okay, add to the bowl, keep adding to the bowl, keep adding to the bowl, keep adding to the bowl. Whoosh, until you've finished. I usually always have food left in my hand. I don't want the dog learning any patterns, such as soon as I give them the last treat, I say my switch off cue, because then the dog may be doing a switch off based on other things that are happening. Okay, so it's really important that I'm controlling the dog and telling them when it's safe to go. Okay, So that's my recall number 1, okay, and I'm going to use that a fair bit outside, particularly if I feel my puppy's going into situations where, you know, they're not ready for that experience or they're getting a little bit too close for comfort. Okay, alongside that, I am going to train them a recall cue word, such as come, whatever word you choose, and think I've already created this picture with the bowl hand being positive. Okay, I talked yesterday a little bit about having training cues before adding the verbal cues. So with this picture, what I want is I'm going to show the puppy the bowl and I'm going to move backwards. Remember, moving away from a dog is always going to draw the dog into you. Okay, so we're going to have some food ready and we're just going to have a little go at this. So I show her the bowl, move backwards. Yep. Mark the behaviour of coming to me. If the puppy's already got to you and standing still, you're a little bit too late with your marker. Okay, I keep feeding until I say whoosh. Okay, now I may be mixing this in with other training, so I might not particularly just keep doing that and then ending the session. You know, if the dog can realise, actually, when you say come, that's the start of some fun, okay, but what we're talking about is some basic steps here. Okay, so again, show her the bowl. Okay, the bowl's got a little bit of food in. Yep, as she moves towards me. Okay, that's where our marker is. Okay, keep adding to the bowl, adding to that bowl. Whoosh. Always having some food left in your hand. Okay, so that she didn't know when the end of the exercise was coming. So I'm going to practice that a lot around the house. I'm going to practice it in the garden, okay, when I'm in kind of training mode. Okay, and once the puppy's responding to that, and obviously the puppy's got to be looking at you because what we're dealing with here is a training cue, so a visual cue to the dog to come towards us until they've got the hang of that. Okay, as that's getting quite reliable, then I want to begin to add my verbal cue. So, when you're adding the verbal cue, think about a tone. Okay, whistle training works really well because the whistle sounds the same each time. And what people tend to do with their recall cue is they vary the tone of it, they vary how they say it, depending on how far the dog is. So I like to try and keep it as consistent as I can. Okay, so I use a nice sharp tone when I use it. Okay, so we're just going to do this close range. So I'm going to say, before I show the puppy my bowl hand, I am going to say the word. Obviously she's a little bit too close, so I'm just going to create a little bit of distance. So, come! Yep. Keep feeding in that bowl. Keep feeding in the bowl. Whoosh! Until I say it's done. So let's have a look at that again. Just going to pop a little bit of food down. Come! Yep. Keep adding to the bowl, adding to the bowl. Remember your pauses, okay? So I'm going to say the word. Come! Show her the bowl, okay? Show her what that word means. Keep adding to that bowl, adding to the bowl. Whoosh. Okay? So when I'm trying to train the word to the dog, word, pause, back it up with your hand signal. She would probably come over to me anyway, just because of the tone in which the tone becomes a little bit of an attention grabber as well. And this is really important for your third stage. So when I'm in different environments, I'm dotting between stage 1 and stage 2, depending on the environment and depending on where the dog's emotions are at. Okay? When I'm ready for stage 3, so I've done lots of work on that over a month. So stage 3 is the dog isn't looking at me. Okay? And really, to be fair, Mex isn't ready for this because she's done a little bit around the house and in the garden, but she really hasn't taken it into kind of different environments. And I certainly haven't gone to stage 3, but we're gonna have a little look at doing that. So this is when the dog's not looking at us. We're gonna say the word in a nice sharp tone, which means hopefully the dog turns around to at least say, you know, what does that mean, Mum? And then I can back it up with my training cue, which is, remember, my bowl hand and my body movement, moving away from the dog to encourage them in. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can do this when she's on her snuffle mat. I could set her up for a failure here, but we'll see. She's going to look at me as soon as I stand up, see if she goes back into her snuffle mat. I'll pretend I'm putting something in there. Oh, look, yummy, yummy. Ain't no fooling you. Come! So nice sharp tone made her look at me. I could then show her what the word means, okay, with my training cue that she knows reasonably well. Good girl, keep adding to that bowl until I say whoosh. Good girl. Okay, so there's 3 stages that I've walked you through there. Now obviously there are more stages. I've got to phase out that lure of the bowl hand and the moving backwards. I'm going to phase those out one at a time. So I might just put my bowl hand in and stand still, or I might just move backwards without the bowl hand, okay? This is slowly over time, okay? You're trying to really base that training, remember, on 100% success. Now, where I find potentially some of my clients may go wrong, okay, is they might use the word out of training mode, okay? And that's really the importance of that tone come as well. So typical things we might say to our dogs, come here, come on, you know, all these comes are coming into their daily life, okay? So your recall cue needs to be in a very different tone to what they might be hearing in sentences that you might say to them in normal kind of life. Or you choose a different word. To me, that works quite well, okay? To me! Okay, you can see again the sharpness of the tone, the dog's going to respond to it. Good girl. I do tend to feed my dogs as well to lots of, you know, when I'm walking them down the road, I might just go, and they look at me, and I'm happy to give them a piece of food. I want them responding to everything that I'm kind of saying, or at least kind of checking in, okay, and seeing what that means, okay. Other people may kind of fail sometimes because the distraction level was too high for the dog. Maybe the timing, okay, remember this timing is essential to get success. So, you know, when I'm first practicing this, maybe my puppy's having a little sniff and I can just see they've finished the sniff and they're probably likely to check in to see where I am because they've been busy. Great time to be working on that kind of stage 3 of adding the word when you know the dog's about to kind of check in anyway, you're going to get success. Okay, so it's all about timing. Try not to kind of overuse it as well. You know, there's plenty of other ways to get your dog back, and you'll see, you know, on my online course, I've probably got about 10 different recall cues for my puppies, okay? And they've all got different emotions linked to them, okay? So I'm going to use a different recall cue. Say if, let's think of an example. So they're quite close range. Maybe some bikes are coming towards me. I've done some work on bikes. The dog's happy with bikes, but I don't want to leave them trotting around on their own because they could get run over by the bike, which is going to cause me a problem. But they're in quite close range. Okay, I'm not going to use my come word. I could use a kissy noise at that point. Okay, so don't overuse any kind of one recall. We talked about hand touch being used for recall. Okay. So each of those things I've got different values to. You know, my dogs would come back to me if I said collar because of all the collar work that I do with them. Okay, so the more recall cues you can build up to use in different situations, the better. Okay, and think of the emotions you're attaching to the word. You know, collar is about here, it's a lovely calm one. Okay, I've got a cue word run, which is my most exciting one. So if my dog happened to be running out to something that I could see they were finding terribly exciting, okay, that's the cue word I'm going to use once it's trained. Obviously these have got to be trained to link the emotions to it. So don't overuse the word. Another reason I feel my kind of clients fail is they will always put the dog's name before come. Okay, now think of how did you train your dog's name? Okay, what do you want the dog to do on its name? Because the way I see people using it is sometimes it means stop what you're doing, sometimes it means look at me, sometimes it means come here, and sometimes it has no meaning at all. Okay, and you're not setting a criteria to that, whereas I would teach my dogs that their name means look at me. Okay, and I'm going to keep that criteria going. So if I'm walking down the street and someone says, what's your dog's name? I have one that I just make up. Because as soon as you tell someone your dog's name, they're going to repeat it between 1 and 5 times. And if it's a cue that means something to the dog, you don't want it repeated, like you wouldn't want someone saying down 5 times in a row. Okay, so think of all your family members, how they use the dog's name. Okay, so there will be an inconsistency in how it's used. So why would you put a word that's got an inconsistent response in front of something that you want an automatic response to? Okay? If your name does mean look at me, why would I want to say look at me, come? I don't need the dog to look at me, I just need the dog to turn around and run towards me. Okay? So try to use the cue word independently of the name. Okay, I think another reason as well is looking at the dog's kind of emotional state of mind, and is it overtired? You know, I know when I take a puppy out for a walk, I've probably got a 15-minute window before they're tired. So when am I going to do my recall training? Probably between maybe 5 and 8 minutes or 4 and 8 minutes, okay? After that, I know I might get failures, okay, because the dog's beginning to get tired, okay? So I'm going to employ other kind of training at that point, okay? So, aim for 100% success all the time with your recall cue. Anytime you've said the word come and the dog fails to come back, that's data that you should have collected. Okay? What does that tell you to do differently as a trainer? Should we put some chicken in your snuffle mat, darling, rather than playing with mummy's shoelaces? Eh? Here you go, baby. There you go, darling. There we go. Just get off the shoelaces. Lovely. Okay, so once you've got some basics, okay, and you've got some basic concept of come, we really want to put a better emotion to this. You know, the way I'm training it now is quite static, okay. I also want rules. So to my dogs, that word means come back to me and stay with me until I tell you it's safe to go. Now, we've obviously got this kind of bowl hand feeding as well, so what I don't want the dog to learn is when the bowl's gone, there's no food. So what I will eventually build this into is I will combine it with cue seeking. So come back to me, I've finished feeding you in the bowl, that doesn't mean I've told you to go yet. Look at me, mark and feed, look at me, mark and feed. I might add some collar work onto that as well. Okay, I'm trying to get the dog into a good pattern of behaviour. The reason for the multiple feeding is keeping them there as well, okay? A lot of people might feed one treat, and I call them the kind of grab and goers, okay? Because they've got one treat, they're going to run back to you, just grab that piece of food, and off they go again, because that's the pattern you've taught them, which is into the poo bag. Now, at least you can see my puppy is naughty as well, okay? There you go, baby. Nice. Okay, let's take that out of the way. Okay, so remember, train for success. If your dog is not likely to come back in that situation or do any command in that situation, then don't say it. Okay? Make sure you've got your dog's attention. Collect the data that the dog is giving you, and this helps form your training plans. Okay? You don't want to set your puppy up to fail. Okay? If you are getting failures early on in your recall training, I would always suggest work with a positive trainer before it goes too far wrong. Okay? Okay, that's the basic recall training from me today to get you started with your puppies. Okay, remember we've got a question and answer session tomorrow, so I will be with you answering your questions live. So I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow, and that's it for today. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.